this one. My apologies for last week.
Start it.
And all righty, great.
It's louder.
Serena, welcome.
Hi.
How are you? Okay. All righty. Okay, guys. So last week we ended with the perspective of Aharon Cohen, and where we left it was, and again, these Mishnayot are strung together the way they are for a reason. They're meant to be learned together, and for one to be the segue to the next. So last week we focused on Aharon Cohen, and we ended last week by talking about being a student of his, with his core traits. What are his core traits? First and foremost, Ahavat HaBeriyot. Ahavat HaBeriyot, which means to have an unconditional love of people, to love people. So Aharon Cohen starts with a certain premise in terms of his approach to his life and his approach to the world, and that is Ahavat HaBeriyot. Now, in Judaism in general, this notion of Ahavat HaBeriyot and Kavod HaBeriyot is a primary core concept that doesn't get enough attention. So we have a mandate by Borei Olam to say, okay, Torah, good, very good, but it sits on a certain foundation of love of people, and we're talking about people in general, talking about the Jewish people in particular, obviously, but love of people in general, and unconditional respect for people, to the extent of you could go to war with someone, but you don't disrespect them, right? When you go to war, when the state of Israel, God forbid, has to go to war, and we don't commit war crimes, we return bodies, we don't hold young men captive like the terrorist organizations do, because there's a fundamental basis of Ahavat HaBeriyot, love of humankind, and respect. Good. Assuming that that's where we start, then step 2 is be like Aharon Cohen and chase peace. Now, if I love people and I respect people unconditionally, what do I want more than for people to be happier, for people to be more comfortable with each other, to end feuds, to build caring and love between people. So Aharon starts with a premise of a love of people and unconditional respect for people. Based on that premise, the natural extension is a simple one: bring peace between people. And the next step to Aharon Cohen, which serves as our premise to study the 2 Mishnayot we're going to do tonight, is Umekarvan Torah. Once you love people and respect people and work on bringing peace between people, now the next step that you want, to the extent that you can, is to make them happier, more whole, more complete, more successful as a result of bringing them closer to Torah to whatever extent you can. Okay? So this is what we did last time. We got it. We know it. Basic, important, good review. Now, assuming that that's where we start with a basis like that, now we're on Mishnah Yud Gimel in the first chapter, the 13th Mishnah in the first chapter. Hu haya omer, same Avtalion, the same author would say, Neged Shama Abed Shama, Udla Mosif Yosef, Udla Yalev Katla Hayav, Uda Ashteme B'taga Halev. He's talking to us in Aramaic, and what he's saying is the following. He's saying that any person who uses their achievements to be ge'eh with the achievements, anybody who struts his stuff, and he says it in a very interesting way. If you strut your name, if you get very invested in your name, and you become, there's a certain level of hubris attached to it, then what does he say you do? It's very interesting. He says you're using up the credits that your good name brought you that would have gone to the next world are used up in this world, so that as time goes on, your name becomes valuable. Again,
That's very powerful.
Abed Shemeh. If a person worked hard to establish a good name, and then he goes ahead and he plays on that name, he overplays that name, he uses that name inappropriately. So the rabbi says in a very interesting, very logical way, he says, okay, you're cashing in your credits here. That's all. So with your good name, you established 100 credits that are eternal credits that will have unlimited value forever and ever. If you misuse that quality of name that you built, so what are you simply doing? You're simply using your credits. You're using your credits, and know that those credits don't come back. Once the eternal credits are used, now they're gone. Okay. Udilam Mosif Yosef. Then he says, and a person who thinks that he's at a certain plateau and doesn't need to grow anymore, here again, you don't want to add, you will be reduced. So this goes back to something we all know. It's obvious that if a person is not growing, then he's becoming less. And in Judaism, the antithesis of things is to say, I want peace of mind, I want to cruise for now, I want to take it easy. We know those things don't apply to Judaism. And the rabbi here is making a very strong point. He's saying, you have to be growing, but he's making a point in saying that the growth has to be intellectual. Udilam Mosif Yosef, he's talking about the intellectual growth that becomes the basis of all growth. So let's be more clear. Udilam Mosif Yosef means person has to be growing in every area. I want to be more clear. I apologize. Udila Yalef Katla Hayav. But the main area of growth has to be intellectual growth. Now, why? I'm going to just unmute yourself and tell me. Why does the main area of growth in life have to be intellectual growth? Joe?
I don't have a good answer for you, but I guess that's as you grow. That's how you grow as a person.
Right. How do I grow as a person? How do I grow as a person?
By constantly learning and growing your mind and growing what you learn.
So by growing my mind,
good.
How does that translate into my growth? How does it translate intellectually? How does it translate into growth? You're right.
The more I know, the more I can hopefully become a better person. The more I can hopefully help other people. The more I can hopefully do more in life and more.
Beautiful. So here's the rub. Here's the rub on this thing. Because most of us, all of us, want to be doing more. We want to be helping more. We want to be giving more. We want to be, right? We all want that. There's nobody on this call, most of the people we all know, all want to be doing more. What is harder, though, is to say that if I knew more, I could do more. I need to know more in order to do more. And this is the big question in Judaism. There's a major argument between the rabbis and what's more important, knowing or doing? And there are two schools of thought. One school of thought said, and we all know this, that it's more important to do. That the world is based on action. And the other school of thought says, oh, come on, God gave us the Torah. The Torah is an extension of him. How do I connect to Borei Olam intellectually? So there's nothing more important than learning. And where do the rabbis end up? In a place we all know. We're all familiar with it. I have to learn to do. And then I have to learn again to do more. And then I have to learn again to do more. And then I have to learn again to do more. So the impetus, the energy, the launching point is from the learning. And that's the biggest challenge, because as we move on in life, and with God's help, we have a second generation, a third generation, right? We have children, we have grandchildren, we have business interests, we have personal interests, we have all the good things that we do. The hardest thing to do is to say, I'm still a student, and I still have to break my head about things. And I know a lot on how I can improve the world and the lives of my children and so on, and make them better. But the way for me to do it is to keep learning. And I'm not only talking about Torah learning. Obviously, it starts with Torah learning. But not only talking about that. There's an absolute, not emphasis, it's a necessity in Judaism to get smarter every day. We have to get smarter. I was learning something this morning. There's umpteen opinions on this thing. And it's an area of halakha, and I've been on and off it for years, and now I'm studying it with a few people, and it's so frustrating. It's just so frustrating. It's pages after pages after pages, and you close the book an hour or two later, and you have X amount that you own, and 5 times X that you got to go back and head on again. But that's exactly the system we have, and it's by design. So, Avtalion says the following: if a person doesn't grow his knowledge, he's shrinking his knowledge. And I'm sorry, doesn't grow, he's shrinking. And what's the impetus? What's the launch point for growth? Is learning. And then he says one other thing, and then we'll go back and drill deeper here. He said if a person uses the respect that he's given in any way as a tool, it will be taken from him. Now, I want to go on this point for a few minutes, and then go back and tell me, again, unmute, what are we talking about here? If a person uses the respect that he or she has earned as a tool, I don't want to use the word weapon because that sounds onerous. I don't even want to go to weapon. I just want to say, if a person is using it as a tool, that kavod that he rightfully earned will be taken from him. What are we talking about?
Talking about being conceited and obnoxious and knowing in a way who you are or what you built, and then using it negatively against somebody to get what you want. Instead of letting your good name guide you and let good things come to you, you are being conceited or arrogant about the name you built.
Let me ask you something. Is there a way to be conceited in a very subtle way? The conceit, the ga'ava, I'm with you. That's clearly unacceptable. But what he's talking about here is something more subtle. Give me a more subtle example.
Maybe, could you hear me? Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe if you have a gift, like for example, if somebody, knows how to cook or something, and then you use it in a way of like showing off or something like that. Like the people out there who don't know how to cook, for example.
Yeah.
Like Fanny knows how to cook.
I'm saying just to use anything that you have as a gift, like to use it in a way. That's all.
I think it's what we're talking about. I think we're talking about the very subtle hubris, the very subtle ga'ava. That's what Avtalion is talking about here. We all are obligated to be very proud of who we are or what we built. And we touched on that when we talked about being anav. Anav doesn't mean to be meek. Anav means to be open and curious and willing to grow. And the way you do that is by being proud. There's a very real distinction between pride and hubris. And I'll tell you, and the hubris can be, it's how a person walks into a room. It's how a person says hello. It's ad kedei kach. It's to that subtle extreme. And that's what the rabbi is talking about here. So the trick is not being a miskin. That's anti-Jewish. Nobody's interested in that. So the trick is being very self-loving, being very confident, being very proud of what you've achieved, but never, or as often as we can, certainly, as close to never as possible, sticking it in somebody's face.
Ricky, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I once read an article, I think it was in the Image magazine, written by somebody about having this, what you're talking about, knowing who you are, meaning knowing that you are building yourself up or trying to be a better person or have done good in your lifetime, but at the same time staying humble. And in the article, it said that we always need to come in front of Hashem upright, kneeling, meaning upright, knowing who we are, but kneeling, knowing he's in charge.
Something that's a fabulous image.
I love that, Debbie.
It always resonated in my head. Like I read it maybe 2 years ago, but it was just so profound that I always, from time to time think of it. We should be proud, but we should also, be with our heads down in front of Hashem, knowing he gives us everything and allows us to be who we are.
Phenomenal. Upright kneeling, I think, is a grand slam. It's a grand slam.
Beautiful.
Because we don't want to be cowered over and miskin-like. That's absolutely not Jewish. And if we're not kneeling in our minds, in our hearts, we're not going to be communicating that in our physical, the way we walk into rooms or whatever it might be, the way we say hello to a person. If we can be upright kneeling, not only in front of God, but in front of people,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's superb. I think.
Ricky?
Yeah.
We have spoken about being boisterous about some of the good things that we do with our children for the purpose of allowing our children to exemplify, to use us as, right?
Yep.
And I think that can come into play here sometimes because we want to try and spread that, but we need to know that we're not doing it for the purpose of spreading it for ourselves.
Right, absolutely. Different platform completely. When I'm with my kids, I want to strut my stuff. Forget, but again, I don't do it with hubris. When I'm with my kids, I want them to know. I went to give blood today. I went to Howell, New Jersey. I don't know where Howell, New Jersey is, right? I said, you know what? I'm sitting through this whole thing. What the heck did I do for anybody? I gave charity, even though my business was completely shut down. I gave charity, which was not so easy. So that I feel good about. But otherwise, there are doctors who came out of retirement who died. Literally, right? That's a fact. So I tried to protect my children. Yes, I did something good with that respect. I tried to learn more Torah, to do what I said, whatever I could do. We all did good. But then I said, you know something? I'm going to go give blood. Do I like giving blood? No, I don't. I honestly don't. I do it, but I honestly don't like it.
Your mother was the queen of giving blood.
How do you remember
Rest
that?
in peace.
How do you
I
remember?
used to see her all the time at the center, at the blood drives, and all over the place.
She was
encouraging everyone to give blood when it was taboo.
Thank you. She really was. She really was. It's so kind of you to mention that. So I came back, and on our family chat, I mentioned it to my children. I said, you know what? It's a very small thing in the scope of what people have done to help in this thing. We've all been very focused on helping community members. We're teaching Torah, we're learning Torah, we're praying for them, we're doing all that kind of thing. But you know what? Let's do something like this. And I'm just answering Joey's point. Joey, I sent it to my children, and they need to know about it. They need to know about it because it's going to shape who they were. As Debbie mentioned, what encouraged me to give blood? I really don't like it. My mother did it until her most senior time in her life, right? She did it. Now that's what my mother stood for. Now I know I've got to be fighting my way back to that until my last day on the planet, because that's who my mother was. So Joey, to your point, hubris is out, upright kneel is in. When it comes to my children, I need to be very in front. And again,
Ricky,
to your point, not with any hubris either, of course. Yeah.
Ricky, can I just add on something to what Debbie said, just to continue what Debbie said? I heard from Rabbi Mansour today, if I may. 3 things, 3 key items, wine, milk, water. If you notice, they're all stored in humble vessels, sort of like the Torah. The Torah can only be stored in a humble vessel, which is the human being.
Nice.
If it's not in a humble vessel, it'll get spoiled. So the same thing, Torah, the key items, it's all about being humble.
Beautiful.
Otherwise, it spoils.
It's beautiful. I just don't want you to
Wine
mistake.
in the barrel, milk in a vat.
Don't mistake. Perfect. Just don't mistake humble for meek or
No.
Afraid or I was telling Joey when we opened about this beautiful program that they put together for Yom Yerushalayim. That was not a meek program. That was a gutsy program, very well conceived, and so that's what we want. We want that pride, the power of that pride, and the commitment to keep growing and to keep enriching our lives and other people's lives. But in our minds and in our hearts, as Debbie put it beautifully, the upright kneeling, it's a beauty. Hi, honey.
But the balance is very hard, Ricky.
I'm learning with my friends.
He's so cute.
You want to say hello to them?
Hi.
Say hello. You want to sit and join us?
Hi.
This is my first Ricky.
So cute.
Hi, Ricky.
Adorable.
One day you'll teach us also.
So
Learn a lot from your grandpa.
You want to sit? What page are we on? We're on this page 17. Cool.
But Ricky, I find that it's still, the balance is almost impossible to achieve.
That's right. The balance is almost impossible to achieve.
I don't think my children know who I am fully, totally.
All right, well,
Your kids know you, Sandy.
No.
I think you got to keep working it. And by the way, be repetitive, be redundant, and just keep putting it out there.
And it's also hard to reach children to be humble, to be what you feel you are or what Eli is. But if you're constantly telling them what you're doing, then they're not going to be so humble.
Why?
Themselves, because I feel like they learn from how you are. If you're constantly talking about yourself or you're constantly...
But you're teaching them in a whole package, Sandy. You're right. You're teaching them in a whole package. Let me tell you how we do things. Let me tell you what we do. These are all the things that we do, God willing, because this is what the Haddad family, our Haddad family does. This is what we do. This is what the Eli and Sandy Haddad family do. We talked about this before. And this is how we do it. This is how we do it. Somebody, I think it's part and parcel. We strut our stuff overtly, deliberately, and then we qualify it by saying how we do it. And I think that's,
Right.
That's
it's just
it.
such a fine balance to
It's absolutely a fine balance.
Without bragging or...
That's right. It's absolutely a fine balance. But but like many things in Judaism are a fine balance like that, right? To be happy and not to be satisfied. Who ever heard of such a thing?
Right. That's
Who ever
true.
heard of such a thing? But that's Jewish. And that's the underlying value of what we're talking about here. I'm very happy with my life. God, thank you for everything you gave me. The people in my life who loved me, right, was so appreciative. And we can't ever get away from that, right? But at the same time, we're striving, we're growing, we're building. How hard is that to achieve? It's a killer. Many people, they're striving because they're not happy, or if they're happy, they're complacent. No, I have to be both. A hard thing to do. That's the Jewish model.
Right, thank you.
Now it continues to the second Mishnah. Huaya Omer, again, Avtalion, Im en anili mili. These are very famous. We're all familiar with them. Anila atzmi ma'ani, vim noach shav ematai. Im en anili mili. What does that mean? Eli, what does that mean?
Not for me, who is for me?
Good. Give me a practical point on that. Practical.
I guess to go according to the flow of this conversation is maybe you should do the right thing by yourself first before you could do the right by others.
Okay, but more than that, go further. Go further. What is it?
Great point. Let's say.
Yeah. In en ani li mili. Serene, what do you say?
Maybe if you don't love yourself, how could anybody else love you?
Right. And what's the challenge with that? We've talked about that. Serene, what's the issue with that?
Not to love yourself too much.
Exactly. It's all the same. It's threading the needle over and over. But we can't vacate this. We can't vacate it. And that's why they spend 4 or 5 or 6 Mishnayot on this. Why? Because there's very few things harder. To love people, care about people, to love me, to be proud, to not have hubris, to be growing. Come on, give me a break someplace.
So, Ricky, what do you do in the case when you don't feel your hubris, but somebody else might, and they take serious offense to it, and look to whatever?
So somebody else thinks that you projected that, feels that you projected that.
Yeah. How do you defend that?
I think you have to approach the person. I think you have to approach the person because you know what? They may be speaking completely from their vantage point, but what I find is in a conversation like that, you invariably find some type of subtle something that was an expression of hubris on some subtle level. And it's important to discover that. You know, like, even to the extent, Alan, to your point, it's so important. You know, certain words. Certain words. I don't know. Certain words. We shouldn't use certain words in certain contexts. What does that mean? This word is okay here. We're talking about normal words, right? Good vocabulary words. But you know what? With certain people, I can't use that term. I just can't use it. So there may have been a button pressed in this that was completely unintentional. It could have been as subtle as a word that you know now to not use around certain people. Ad kedei kach. That's how it works. Now, how did other religions deal with this? They removed themselves from people, right? The Christians mandated that their religious leaders never got married. So they didn't have to deal with this stuff on a very serious level, right? Other people went and buried themselves in monasteries or these obscure places and so on. By us, God forces us to engage the world more and more. And based on last week's Mishnayot, he says, you must never stop engaging the world because you always have a way to interact and a must to interact. If that's true, to your question, I am invariably going to hurt somebody or to express to somebody some level of hubris unintentionally. And I need to track it down. I need to dig it up because I will learn something important about myself. And I'll modify a behavior, even if it's for a certain constituency of people. I want to tell you a silly thing. A number of years ago, I got involved with one of the schools in the community that was really struggling at the time. There was conversation of closing the school and so on. And the leader of the school was a qualified person, but I found that he just didn't smile. I would say the person is an effective administrator. He's a very well-organized person. He's Talmid Chacham. So what? So what if he doesn't smile? So I'll never forget, one afternoon, I asked him if we could take a walk outside the building. We took a long walk, and we talked about the value of smiling. How silly does that sound? How silly? So look, he had all the goods. He was a good administrator, Ben Torah, Talmid Chacham, leader.
Did it
What do you
work?
mean? The lack of the smile projected hubris.
It's like a bedside manner almost.
Huh?
Like a bedside manner.
Now imagine if the bedside manner was all day long. So you have all the qualifications, but you don't have the human sensitivity to smile. The lack of a smile in his case to certain people suggested hubris. Ad kedei kach, to that extent. So we will be forever pushing somebody's button, always, always. We're not going to save everyone or fix everyone, but it's important for us to pursue their point of pain or discomfort with us. It's important. It's important. And I want to say one other thing on this to Alan's point. It's silly and it's cliched. It's really cliched and I don't want to go into the cliche category here, but yeah, I was watching. I'll tell you another quick story. I was watching a young rabbi in the community. He's been sending me his 2-3 minute Tidrei Torah during this thing, and I've been enjoying them. I'm really very much immersed in my own learning and teaching, so I don't listen to a lot of other stuff, but I've been enjoying them. But one of the things I found in his case is there's a tremendous amount of content, but there's no human connection. Smile, embrace me. Okay, you're talking to me on a screen, it's true, so it's harder, but it's achievable. Embrace me. Be more human to me. So, Alan, to your point, the humanness of things is the antidote to people feeling a sense of hubris. Now, I'm going to go one step further, and you'll pardon me for doing this. You're a very successful guy, right? All of you on this call are very successful people. You're a very successful guy. When you walk into the room, people who know you less well are going to ascribe this thing to you. They're going to ascribe the upright but not the kneeling. You understand that? Because of who you are. And therefore, you could have done nothing. Nothing.
Actually, it's the opposite. When I walk into a room, people don't know me. It's like I'm invisible.
They don't know you, they don't know you. Okay, but if they do know you, then you're going to have a challenge, right? And the challenge is going to be being who you are and being very human to people.
It's humility.
Those who don't know you, all right. Good. Let's keep going and we'll wrap it up. Kishani la'atzmi ma'ani. Kishani la'atzmi ma'ani. This goes back to what we said a couple of weeks ago, meaning I need deep, important friendships. I need them. If I'm going to be a person who's sameach b'chalki, but also growing, if I'm going to be expansive, if I'm going to be creative, if I'm going to be very focused to learning so that I can do more, I need a few buddies. I need people with whom I can share these things. I got to have it. So, kishani la'atzmi ma'ani, people mistranslate to say, well, if I'm not giving to others, what am I? That's not what he wrote here. It's not the right context. We already talked about giving to others a couple of Mishnayot ago. He's saying, if this is all between me and me, ma'ani, how am I going to get there? You're not. So this adds another huge dimension of opportunity and challenge. The opportunity and challenge is giving my trust to another person and then maintaining the relationship with that person. That's a big thing. We talked about this a handful of weeks ago. That small circle of people with whom we build our lives, with whom we can completely trust. He's making it very important here that I have to care about myself and I need people to build with me. And then he knocks it out of the park by saying the obvious, we know it, but we need to own it. Ve'im lo achshav ematai. Don't procrastinate. Just do it. I think Nike took it from us. Do it. Do it. Make this mistake, but do it. Get in the game. Stop asking questions. You know, there are so many people who could bring so much good to their own lives and good to the world if they didn't really have to question 100 times. Guess what? It's 50% baked. It's 70% baked. Get out there and do it. I was interviewing someone for a job today. I told her, let's call her Susan. I said, listen, Susan, if you hit a grand slam in this project I'm giving you to vet her out for the position, I said, Susan, if you hit a grand slam, you're going to get this 60% right. You know what? You're not going to hit a grand slam. All I'm looking for is for you to hit a double. If you hit a double, you might get it 20 to 30% right. And I'd be very happy with that because that would give us something to build from. I said, so you can go through the rest of the interview process with the other candidates on the basic level. But because of your experience and your interest, you can go and do this project. And we can see how it comes out. Are you willing to do it? Knowing you're probably going to get it 20% right? She said, for sure. I said, that's a great one. So, Imlach Shav Ematai. Ready, fire, aim. Na'aseh v'nishma. Do it. Get it done. It's better than pontificating and thinking and asking. And again, if I'm growing and I'm developing and I'm happy and I'm unsatisfied and I have great people in my life, then it's a very good model. It's a very good model. Thoughts, questions, challenges?
That's beautiful, Ricky. Thank you.
Our leaders throughout our history always had problems with that. Our leaderships across the board, whether it be biblical times or current times.
What did I say? He who hesitates is lost. It's so true. Don't hesitate. Make a mistake. Guess what? Repeat the mistake. But just be in the game. Just be in the game. Repeat the mistake. I'll tell you one final story. I was invited to teach in Spain and Portugal a number of years ago. So when my book was published, they invited me to teach the Risks to Succeed concepts in a bunch of colleges and a few startup companies. It was very, very interesting. So I'd spoke a number of times, questions and answers, this, that. And finally, I walked out of one meeting with a really great startup company. And I just had the sense that there was very limited buy-in. And I said, what's the story? We stood outside their office and we spoke, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I'll never forget. And they said, Mr. Cohen, in our culture, if you make a mistake, you're finished. You're blacklisted. Nobody will touch you. And really, my heart was broken. My heart was broken. I said, how do you encourage young people to grow? How do you encourage them to be ambitious? I said, you know, I'm really sorry to say, but where I come from, the perspectives of an American, a Jew, and the land of Israel, you don't look at someone until he's made a bunch of mistakes. They don't mean anything until they've made a bunch of mistakes. I said, I would never partner with someone in an effort unless he or she made several mistakes because they don't know anything. I said, so in our cultures, we're very Na'aseh Nishma oriented, very ready, fire, aim. And the people we value are the people who stuck their necks out, made the mistakes, and now we're with them for the next round, which God willing will bring more growth and more mistakes.
Amen. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Any other thoughts, questions? We're
Thank
good?
you, Ricky.
All right,
Thank you.
everybody. Chag
Thank you.
Sameach.
Thank you. Happy
See you.
holidays.
Have a
was
beautiful
Happy
holiday.
holiday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ricky. Happy
Happy
holidays.
Holiday. Thank
Happy
you.
holiday.
Great.
Jack Baruch.
Jack.